Hello, everybody. It's Sylvia and Peter again with another conversation about stuff that's in the news. We do this unscripted and we have a conversation like anybody else would, and we see where it takes us.
Mm.
And then at the end, we invite you to comment and give us your wisdom, which is very often far greater than ours.
Indeed.
Yesterday was Sunday. I read the Sunday Times, and there was an article saying, let me just read from it. Bank staff who fail to swipe in for 3 days a week could lose bonuses. So there was a thing called the pandemic, and everyone was sent home, and we realized that business didn't die. Well, some businesses did, but the office-based ones like banks and insurance and other places could actually function with people working from home. Then there was a huge movement towards let's not bother with the office. HSBC drained their top 2 or 3 floors because why would anyone need those huge corner offices when we could work just as well, hot desking and work from home? Big articles in the papers about that as well. And now they're all saying, I say all of them, but a lot of them, Citigroup, the American one, Lloyd's, HSBC, and others are demanding that people are back in the office at least a certain number of days a week. And there's a term twat, which used to mean something for me, but also in the office world means Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday only. So what is it we have now realized that you and I probably knew anyway?
God, goodness me. Small question. How do we answer that very, very briefly? I think, in my opinion, in my experience, it's one of the things that I did a lot of work on back in 2020. That how will and does this affect individual performance and productivity? Now, the argument has always been that people can work from home and they can work their work into their home life, whether you call it work-life boundary, harmony, balance, whatever. You know, you could do a bit before the kids wake up, you could then do the kids, or you can work, blend it together, which sounds a fabulous idea. At the same time, there is also the question from organisations in terms of security, control of information, you know, got all this stuff on at home. But we'll put that aside. But from a performance and productivity point of view, when you're sitting alone at home on your PC, whether it's on an ironing board or a kitchen worktop, that interaction, that sociability, the creativity, innovation, brainstorming, energy, the buzz that we often get from being in an office. For example, if I'm checking a set of documentation and I read it in a certain way, it's really helpful, in my opinion, to be able to get up and walk over and say, you know, hi, Peter, can you just check that this clause is right? Whereas to and froing on an email. And loneliness, isolation, feeling alone, there's data and statistics that prove, not just anecdotally, that those feelings and those emotions increase greatly during the pandemic, notwithstanding the fact that these people are at home spending more time with their loved ones. But not everyone has loved ones. Those people working at home are not always have people around them. And that, for a lot of people, that separation of being able to go to work and then come home from work. So again, once those things start to affect our thoughts, our mood, our attitude, our temperament, characteristics, our physiology can start to change, and that can start to affect our mental health, and then our performance and our productivity, how we turn up and how we do our jobs can start to deteriorate.
During the pandemic, I talked to someone who said she didn't work from home. She lived with work.
Yeah,
very interesting. And that really nailed it for me, because that was how it felt for her.
Yeah.
People who know me know that I tend to avoid the extremes. So 100% must be in the office is one extreme. Let's not bother with the office. Let's all work from home. 100% remote is the other extreme. Neither of them work, I think. So we have to find this happy medium. And I think the mistake that is now seem to be creeping in is that organizations want to define what that medium is because it's easy to manage. And the more flexibility you give, the more difficult it is to manage. So how can we make people go back to the office? Oh, we can tell them you won't get paid your bonus if you're not in the office. Well, is that really a fair measure? Is that just hitting people over the head with a big stick and thinking that they're only there for their money? So UK HSBC, for example, have been told by the bigger thing that you can choose how you want to do things in the UK. And I think Citigroup has said something similar to that. That's great, but again, it's just back to the old days, isn't it? Where it was the demand that this is how it works. Does that generate animosity? Does it generate more productivity? I don't know. I just knew this debate was going to come. Everybody jumped on the bandwagon. It was the employment market was in favor of the employees, so they could pick and choose and say what they wanted. But there's also a lot of women who felt the pressure of working from home being absolutely ridiculous because they either felt or were expected to also run the household at the same time. So doing all the washing and cleaning and cooking and all that stuff during their working day, where men apparently didn't feel the same pressure. A boss in Denmark for a very well-known Danish company said, nobody works from home, not during the pandemic, never, because he was not going to pay for people to walk their dogs. Now, that's a different attitude again, isn't it? One that isn't particularly kind towards the employees. So what I would be in favor of is really when actually I need to work from home today because I need a bit of peace and quiet, and I can get this done better if I work from home. I'm available by email, or you can just Teams or Zoom or whatever. Instead of saying religiously, I must be in the office these days or not these days. But it is more difficult to manage, isn't it? And then there's a whole social thing where people say, well, how can, as you just mentioned, how can I just rock up to somebody and ask to just look through a paragraph or help me with something when I have to book a call and organize it, and it becomes quite stifled. That's one thing, but then there's the whole social aspect of it. The cup of tea you have in the kitchenette, and you talk about yesterday's football or what you're going to do over the weekend. But do we go to work to be social? Nah, employers would say, well, you go to work to bloody work. That's what I pay you for, not to have a chat in the kitchen. But it happens anyway. So what I don't like about this, let's force people back into the office, thinking that because they're in the office, they work, because there's a lot of work avoidance going on in offices where people spend a lot of time looking busy without doing a thing. So we still have to, I think, measure ourselves on output and outcomes, not necessarily hours worked and clocked in and clocked out.
It's an interesting, because what's popped up to me as a phrase that many of you have heard me say before is a happy crew is a productive crew. Now that will be different and for absolutely everyone. And giving people options is great. At the same time, many people struggle with the options. You know, what choices do I make? Some people like the delineation of I'm going to be here for that and here for there and here for there. And giving them options that's not suitable for them, you know, that they will struggle with that. So as you say, you know, rather than have the one extreme here and the one extreme here, finding that middle ground is always going to be difficult because everyone's needs and wants and the way they approach things is going to be tough for some. Some have the ability to what we call behavior flexibility, do this, then go and do that, come back to this, go off and do that, come back to this. Some like that, actually, you know, I need to have this delineation.
Mm.
I think it's a great idea if one is working on a big project to be able to have that time to completely focus. But where does that tip then into becoming quite isolated? And a lot of people may not have the self-awareness that's sometimes required to be able to know what's right for the individual. But then to be told by your employer you have to be in the office X versus Y, then a lot of people will become defensive, being told what to do and how to do it. It's a really difficult path to tread on both sides.
You just mentioned something.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, the employer, they have a business to run. And if the business doesn't run, they may not be the employees that they can employ.
You just mentioned something quite interesting that no one has, I think, thought about a lot before, that people take offense if they're being told you must be in the office certain days. Before all this working from home became a thing, well, that was just the norm.
Yeah.
You were in the office 5 days a week. So we gave people choice. The choice was forced upon everybody. I think this was going to happen anyway. But because of the pandemic, it was just dumped on us like a complete opposite to what we had before. And now we're trying to find that happy medium where it works in the way it works. And very often it's just about, well, be flexible about your coming and going time so that you can take your children to school and kindergarten and whatever else. So you don't have to be here sharp on the dot at whatever, as long as your meetings and commitments are fulfilled. You can have that flexibility. That sometimes is just enough to make things work. So this is kind of the same old chestnut we've dug up again. It's not a very old chestnut, but it's been talked about a lot. And are we more productive at home? Are we more productive in the office? I don't think we have the exact data yet, because it's so individual. It depends what company you work for, what industry you're in, how you function as a person. Some people do work better at home. Others fall apart at home because of the loneliness and the pressures and the temptations of watching daytime TV instead of working and what have you. So I work from home every day because that's my office. That's where I work from. I like it. It works for me. There was a time when I did work for somebody else, and I worked from home a couple of days a week because it worked for me and I didn't have to do the driving. And that was the commute that was killing me, not being in the office, really. So why don't we ask everybody to let us know where they think we are at the moment and where they think we should be going with this working from home or working in the office?
Yeah. Be good to hear what other people think, because I know myself, and I work from home, and there are days when I don't see another human being. I might see them online, but I'm very aware that some days I have to not exactly make the effort. I'm conscious, so I then have to go out, meet people, do stuff, and it'd be very easy to get stuck just indoors. So I think a lot of it requires our sort of self-awareness as to what works for us and what doesn't, and to have that voice to decide what does work for us, and have those conversations with our employers as to how we perform at our best. How do I perform at my best? You know, Peter will ask himself, how does he perform at his best? What's the environment? What does he need to perform at his best? And I think that's conversations for people to have as well.
So previous psychological research has found out that to function well as human beings, we need about 6 hours of human interaction every day. So we can ask ourselves, have you got your 6 hours today? Yes, Zoom calls do count, but it's not the same as in person. Let us hear what you think about the 6 hours. Is that doable, or is that completely out of the question? Take care.
I can make it like the 10,000 steps. You have to have your 6 hours.
On that note.
Yep. Cheerio.
See you later. Bye for now.